The first thing I noticed wasn't that the lights were on. It wasn't the unfamiliar car parked in my driveway. It wasn't even the strange silence hanging over the house that had once echoed with laughter. It was my best friend's face. Emily had promised she'd take care of everything while I spent 4 months overseas for work. She'd watered my plants, collected my mail, and kept the place alive while I was gone. I trusted her more than anyone else in the world. But the moment she opened the front door and saw me standing there with my suitcase, all the color drained from her face. She looked as though she'd seen a ghost. Then she whispered 4 words that made every hair on my body stand up. "Don't go upstairs." Before we continue, if you enjoy emotional stories filled with mystery, hope, and unforgettable endings, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to Kindness of Power, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another story. Also, tell us in the comments, which city and country are you watching from? We'd love to know where our amazing community is joining us from. Now, let me tell you what really happened. I never expected my business trip to end early. The company had sent me to Germany to oversee a major engineering project that was supposed to last until the end of November. Flights had been booked. Meetings were scheduled months in advance. Everything was planned. Then one afternoon, the client unexpectedly canceled the final phase after completing ahead of schedule. My boss smiled. "Congratulations," he said. "You're going home 3 weeks early." I couldn't stop smiling. I imagined surprising Emily with souvenirs, grabbing coffee together, laughing about everything I'd missed. She'd been my best friend since college. We'd survived heartbreaks, bad jobs, family problems, and countless late-night conversations over cheap pizza. There wasn't a single person I trusted more. When I left, I'd handed her my house keys without hesitation. "I owe you," I'd said. She laughed. "You'll pay me back with German chocolate." Easy enough. The flight home felt endless. By the time my taxi pulled into my quiet neighborhood, it was nearly 9 in the evening. Everything looked exactly as I'd left it. Almost. A silver SUV sat in my driveway. I frowned. Emily drove a little blue hatchback, maybe. She'd borrowed someone's car. I shrugged it off. I quietly rolled my suitcase toward the front porch, excited to surprise her. Before I could unlock the door, it opened. Emily stood there wearing one of my old sweatshirts. For one brief second, she smiled. Then she realized I wasn't supposed to be there. Her smile disappeared instantly. "Claire? Surprise!" Instead of hugging me, she grabbed the edge of the door so tightly her knuckles turned white. "What? What are you doing here?" "I came home early." She didn't answer. She simply stared at me. That's when she quietly stepped outside, closing the door behind her. She wasn't inviting me in. She was blocking me. A strange feeling settled in my stomach. "Emily, you weren't supposed to come until next month." "I know," she kept glancing over her shoulder toward the staircase inside the house. Then she leaned closer. "Claire," her voice cracked. "Don't go upstairs." I laughed nervously. "What? Please." "What happened?" She swallowed. "I'll explain." My heart started racing. Every terrible possibility flashed through my mind. A break-in, a fire, water damage. Had someone died? I pushed gently past her. "I'm going." "Inside." She grabbed my arm. "Hard." "No, I'd never seen fear in Emily's eyes before. Real fear, not embarrassment, not guilt, fear. That scared me more than anything. I slowly looked around the living room. Everything looked normal. The couch sat exactly where I'd left it. My books remained on the shelves. The family photographs were untouched. Even my favorite candle sat on the coffee table. Nothing looked wrong. Yet, Emily looked like she was seconds away from crying. I heard something, a faint creak from upstairs. I froze, so I whispered, "Who's here?" Emily closed her eyes. "I can explain." "Who's upstairs?" She didn't answer. Instead, another floorboard creaked. Someone was definitely moving. I felt my heartbeat pounding inside my ears. Emily. Silence. Then, very slowly, footsteps coming toward the stairs. turned. Emily stepped in front of me. No! Move! No! Move! The footsteps stopped. Complete silence. Then a man's voice called softly from upstairs. Emily? I stared at her. She looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. She couldn't finish. A man slowly walked down the staircase. He looked to be around 65. Gray beard, thin frame, gentle eyes. He froze. Halfway down when he saw me. For several long seconds, none of us spoke. Finally, he sighed. I suppose this was going to happen eventually. I looked at Emily. Who is he? She burst into tears. I am so sorry. I couldn't process what was happening. Had she been living here? Had she moved someone into my house? Had my best friend betrayed me? The older man carefully came downstairs. He didn't seem threatening. In fact, he looked deeply uncomfortable. My name is Walter, he said quietly. I didn't shake his hand. I didn't ask your name. Emily covered her face. Walter nodded sadly. You deserve an explanation? Yes, you absolutely do. Emily tried speaking first. It isn't what you think? Really? She nodded frantically. I know how this looks. No. I snapped. You don't. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I never wanted to lie to you. But you did. She looked away. Walter spoke gently. This is my fault. I glared at him. Then maybe you should leave. He nodded once. I will. He picked up an old backpack sitting near the staircase before. Reaching the front door, he paused. Emily only wanted to help someone. Then he walked outside. The house became painfully quiet. I looked at Emily. She couldn't even meet my eyes. You moved a stranger into my home? She whispered one heartbreaking word. Yes. Anger exploded inside me. You gave him access to everything I own. He never touched anything. You expected me to believe that? I swear. You lied to me for months. She wiped away tears. I didn't know what else to do. I laughed bitterly. You could have asked. I knew you'd say no. That hurt. Not because she was necessarily wrong, but because she'd made the decision for me without me. I sat down heavily on the couch. Everything suddenly felt unfamiliar. This house doesn't even feel like mine anymore. Emily quietly sat across from me. You remember my dad? I nodded cautiously. He always said kindness isn't kindness when it's convenient. I stayed silent. She continued. 3 months ago, I found Walter, sleeping behind the grocery store. Frowned. He'd lost everything. Lots of people lose everything. I know. He refused. Shelters. He'd been robbed. Twice. He refused churches. He'd been assaulted. He trusted nobody. Except she. Looked around my house. He felt safe here. I stared at her. You brought a homeless man into my house? He wasn't dangerous. How could you know that? I spent weeks getting to know him. My anger fought with confusion. We had coffee. I checked his background. He worked as a school librarian for 37 years. I didn't answer. He lost his wife, then his daughter, then his home after medical bills. He had no one. Emily's voice broke again. He was sleeping in the rain. I looked toward the staircase. Every emotion crashed together inside me. Betrayal, confusion, sympathy, disbelief. Then Emily whispered something that changed. Everything, Claire. I never told you who the upstairs room belonged to. I frowned. What? She slowly looked toward the ceiling. It was your mother's room. A cold chill ran through my body. Only Emily knew why no one had entered that room since Mom passed away 6 years earlier. The room had remained untouched, locked, preserved, exactly as Mom had left it. I had never been emotionally strong enough to clean it. Out, my voice shook. You put him? Emily nodded, unable to speak, in my mother's room. The world seemed to stop turning, and at that moment, I realized I wasn't just about to uncover Emily's secret. I was about to discover something hidden inside that room that would change both our lives forever. I couldn't breathe for 6 years. No one had stepped into my mother's room. Not me, not Emily. Not even the relatives who had helped after the funeral. I'd locked the door, because opening it felt like admitting she was truly gone. Now, A complete stranger had slept there. The thought felt unbearable. Stood so quickly the coffee table rattled. "I'm going upstairs." Emily rose too. "Claire, please. No. I know you're angry. I'm beyond angry." I climbed the stairs, every step heavier than the last. My hand trembled as I reached the old brass doorknob. The familiar scent of lavender greeted me before I even opened the door. It was the perfume my mother had worn. Every single day, I pushed the door open slowly, then I stopped. The room wasn't ruined. It wasn't even messy. It was alive. The curtains had been opened, allowing warm evening light to spill across the hardwood floor. The dust that had once coated every surface was gone. Fresh flowers rested in a small vase beside my mother's photograph. The bed was neatly made with the same quilt she had sewn years ago. Nothing had been stolen. Nothing had been broken. Instead, the room looked as though someone had cared for it with extraordinary tenderness. I slowly walked to the dresser. My mother's jewelry box was exactly where I'd left it. The old music box beside it still worked. The framed photographs hadn't moved an inch. Everything was there. Behind me, Emily spoke quietly. "He cleaned the room before he ever slept here." I turned. "What?" "He refused to stay until it was spotless." I stared at her. "He said no one should be forgotten behind layers of dust." Those words struck something deep inside me. I looked around. Again, for the first time in years, I could actually see my mother's room, not as a frozen museum of grief, but as the peaceful place it had once been. Emily handed me a folded piece of paper. "I found this yesterday." "What is it?" "It was under your mother's sewing machine." I unfolded it carefully. It was my mother's handwriting. My heart nearly stopped. It wasn't a long letter, just a single page. "My dear Claire, if you're reading this," then someone finally opened this room. Tears blurred my vision. "I hope it was because you were ready, not because you were forced." I covered my mouth. "Please don't let this room become a shrine to sadness. Homes are meant to shelter the living, not imprison memories." The tears came faster. "If one day someone needs this room more than my belongings do, let them have it. Love grows when it's shared. Promise me you'll always choose kindness over fear. Love always, Mom." I couldn't speak. Emily quietly cried beside me. "I swear to you," she whispered. I had never seen that letter before. I believed her, because neither of us had known it existed. Downstairs, I heard the front door close gently. Walter, he was leaving. I folded the letter and rushed downstairs. By the time I reached the porch, he was already halfway down the sidewalk, carrying his worn backpack over one shoulder. "Walter!" He stopped, but didn't turn around immediately. When he finally faced me, there was sadness in his eyes. "I'm sorry," he said. "I never wanted to come between friends." "You knew it was my mother's room?" He nodded. "Emily told me." "And you still stayed?" His voice became almost a whisper. "I didn't want to." "Then why?" "Because your friend insisted that your mother would have wanted someone to have a safe place." I looked at the letter in my hand. Maybe she had been right. Walter smiled. "Sadly, I'll find somewhere else." "Where?" He shrugged. "I've done it before." The image of him sleeping behind grocery stores flashed through my mind. Then I remembered my mother's words. Choose kindness over fear. For months, I had imagined coming home to the same empty house I had left behind. Instead, I had returned to a house that had quietly changed 3 lives, mine, Emily's, Walter's. I took a deep breath. "Wait," he looked up. "You don't have to leave tonight." Emily stared at me in disbelief. "Claire, I still have questions," I said honestly, and I was hurt. She nodded through tears. "I know, but hurting me doesn't erase the good you tried to do." Walter's eyes filled with tears. "I can sleep in the garage." I shook my head. "No." He looked confused. "My mother already answered that." I held up the letter. For several seconds, none of us spoke. Then Walter quietly cried. Not loud sobs, just silent tears from someone who hadn't expected mercy. Over the following weeks, Our strange little household slowly found its rhythm. Walter insisted on earning his keep every morning he repaired. Something around the house, loose cabinet, doors, broken fence panels, leaky faucets, things I'd ignored for years quietly, disappeared from my to-do list. He also cooked, not fancy, meals, simple homemade soups, fresh bread, and hearty dinners that somehow tasted exactly like comfort. One evening I asked him where he'd learned to cook. My wife, he smiled. She believed feeding someone was another way of saying, I'm glad you're alive. I never forgot that sentence, Emily. And I weren't magically okay. Overnight, trust takes time to rebuild. There were difficult conversations, long apologies, moments of anger, moments of silence. One afternoon, she finally asked the question she'd been carrying. Can you ever forgive me? I thought carefully before answering. I forgive why you did. It? She looked hopeful, but not that you kept it from me, she nodded. Don't deserve instant forgiveness, no. But you've started earning it? She smiled through tears. I'll keep earning it. And she did. Months later, Walter received wonderful news. A retired teacher he had once worked with recognized him through a local newspaper story about homelessness. With help from former colleagues, he was offered a position organizing the library at a nearby community center. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave him purpose. Soon afterward, he rented a small apartment of his own. The day he moved out, he handed me a wrapped package. Inside was a beautifully restored wooden jewelry box. My hobby, he explained. I repair forgotten things. There was a small note inside. Thank you for reminding me that I wasn't forgotten. I placed the box beside my mother's photograph. It has remained there ever since. Every Sunday, Walter still comes over for dinner. Emily never misses one either. The three of us laugh more than we ever imagined possible. Sometimes we talk about my mother. Sometimes we simply enjoy the silence. But one thing has changed forever. Her room is no longer locked. It became a peaceful guest room, filled with sunlight instead of sorrow. The memories stayed. Only the loneliness left. Looking back now, I understand why Emily froze when I came home early. She wasn't afraid I'd discover a terrible crime. She was afraid I'd never forgive an act of compassion that had crossed a line. She made the wrong decision, but for the right reason. And sometimes life asks us to hold two truths at once. Someone can betray your trust and still have a heart full of love. Forgiveness doesn't erase pain. It transforms it into something that can finally heal. My mother left me a house. Emily reminded me what a home truly is. And Walter showed me that the greatest gift we can offer another human being isn't money or comfort or even shelter. It's the feeling that they still matter. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to subscribe to Kindness of Power, like this video, and share it with someone who believes kindness can change lives. Every subscription helps us bring more heartfelt stories like this to people around the world. And before you go, tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you had come home to find a stranger living in your house? Sometimes one unexpected choice can change an entire life, or three.